Hey, cool, it's working. I just have a new hard drive, so because I've got so much data of recording these sessions, you know, when they're like an hour long, it's quite a lot of video. So I've got a big old new hard drive. So and the recording software didn't know where that was. Right. Okay. Ah, okay. What are you recording with? Is it OBS? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Welcome. Okay. So, before we do anything, let's just make sure we're running the same setup. So, just go garage or garage or however they say it in America, and then iRacing setups and garage. Garage is very English, isn't it? So, oh yeah, and you're French anyway, so you say it properly because it's a French word. Okay. Garage. Yeah, garage. No. So I'm on the setup in iRacing setups, which is called medium downforce endurance. That's it. Cool. I have no idea how this feels, but I imagine because iRacing have made it, it's kind of like fine. It just won't be as fast as, you know, a really good custom setup. But I think for... That's all right. I was wondering what you were oohing about. I think for us, this is probably fine. Oh, go on. Okay. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, okay. Let's talk about it. Okay, that's good. Ah, okay. Yeah, okay, so the aero balance calculator, I don't think that section actually affects the car. I think that is literally a way of figuring out how a change would affect the car. So if you change, so for example, if I just change mine down to like 40 millimeter ride height, it's essentially telling you if you make this change, what's it going to do to the aero balance of the car? I know that sounds obvious, but you can see when you go down on the on like the front ride height, you're giving yourself more front downforce. So if you've already got an oversteery car, if the front end is already turning in too well, you know that's not the right thing to do. You don't want to increase your front downforce. But if you're suffering, you know, if you're suffering with other handling issues, say you are losing the rear end in a high downforce corner, or like a high speed corner, sorry, I should say, then you can look and see what happens if I change the rear wing angle. What's going to happen? Okay, I'm going to lose my front downforce percentage, which means it's more of a rear downforce percentage. But I don't think if I go down to like 1 degree on rear wing, if I look on the other pages, I just want to make sure. Yeah, rear wing angle. Ah, okay, that's 1 degree here. Has it changed it? If I go up to 5. Oh, okay, it does. It actually does affect it. Okay, I didn't think it did it. I thought it was purely a calculator. So when you change it on this page, actually it does change it on the main setup page as well. So is that the same with ride height then? Let's check that. Front ride height at speed. Because if this does it, this is a way easier way of changing your setup than actually adjusting it with the suspension. So if I go down to here and put my front ride height down really, really low and apply. Ride height here, 50.2. If I just go down even lower. 50. I don't think that's affecting it. I think it's only the wing. But really, I mean, you could do this calculation in your head. You know, you can think, if I go lower on the front, that's going to give me more front downforce. You don't know the exact percentage, but you know it's going to be an increase. I'm just checking this just to make sure I'm not going mad. So I've just raised the front ride height massively, and it hasn't changed it here. No, so on this calculator page, the wing angle, weirdly, is connected to your actual wing. The other two are just for your reference. I'm going to load the setup again anyway, because I don't want it to be random, just in case. Let's go medium downforce endurance. But in terms of bias, you started talking to me about brake bias. Obviously, that's very different to this. So
Yeah, that's very different. I think I guess brake balance and aero balance.
it just made you think. Okay, got it.
But yeah, no, I get that they're both very different.
But you know what the brake bias is going to affect. So you're like comfortable with if the car is doing a certain thing, then you can make this adjustment, and you know how it's going to like change the way the car feels.
I mean, I guess I know because I've driven motorcycles in
Yeah.
Mexico that
Yeah.
on brake and a rear brake.
Yeah.
But in cars, obviously, I've never ever had to even think about it, right? Like I have no, I just have one brake pedal.
Mhm.
So I don't know in racing scenario, or even just like a lab scenario, I don't know the impact of changing the brake bias, let alone like changing it from dynamically. Like I can see if you told me, hey Serge, like do you feel like so in general, based on my understanding, I know that you might wanna if you lock up the front too much, obviously it means you have too much braking power in the fronts.
Yeah.
So maybe you move it at the back, okay. But I would imagine that you just set that up in general for a specific track because you know the track. But then I don't know why you want to make small adjustments as you're racing.
Okay. Cool. Let's talk about it then, because this is great. Like I haven't spoken about this with any other coaching person because no one's really brought it up, and so this is a really, really good conversation. So the reason you make small adjustments, you're right. First of all, you would generally set it up pretty much correctly before you even start. And when I say your engineer or your iRacing setup, it should be roughly right to begin with. You know, it's not going to be 100% front or rear, obviously. It's somewhere that's balanced. But the reason it would change during a stint or during a race is because the amount of grip available at the front and rear axle changes during a stint. So say, for example, you were... I'll do like an extreme example. Say you'd really worn out your rear tyres and before the start of the stint, you had a brake balance where when you braked maximum pressure, the front and rear axles would lock up in sync, like they both lock up together. Well, now, if you've worn out your rear tyres, the rear is going to lock before the front, and you'll feel instability as you're coming into a braking zone. It's like someone's pulling the handbrake and you're losing the rear. And in that situation, you go a couple of clicks forward just to compensate and say, okay, because the rear tyres can't cope with that same amount of retardation, I'm going to move some of the pressure to the front. And so it's those tweaks. And obviously, likewise, probably the more common version of that is I've worn out my fronts, or I've locked up a couple of times already, and one particular tyre is now just it doesn't have as high a potential anymore. And so if I try and use the same brake pressure to that tyre, it's going to lock again, and so or that axle is going to lock more easily. And I still want to trail the brake slightly, so I'm going to have to either brake earlier and therefore more gently, or if I want to still try and maximise my speed into a corner, I've just got to click it back a little bit. So it's as simple as this. Whichever axle feels like it's lacking grip or lacking braking performance when you need it, you go the other direction. It's literally as simple as that.
I think what I was missing is just the fact that the tires just degrade over time.
Yeah.
Your braking potential, because everything you do, braking, accelerating, steering, is all going through the tires. Obviously, in braking, you will have a budget.
Yeah.
How much rubber, based on how much rubber you have at the front and the back, so you're managing that as you're consuming the rubber resource.
And it's not just like the wear. Obviously, it's the temperature. You might have overheated the fronts or the rears, and so it might be a temporary change. You might be like, "Ooh, okay. Normally, I have it quite on the limit, so the rear is pretty close to locking, but not quite. It's like very balanced. But now, because I've had a few oversteer moments, I've spiked the rear tyre temperatures. I can't cope with that same bias now. I'll go a click forward, and at the next corner, you're like, yeah, okay, that's kind of dulled it down. That helps get the temperatures back down because you're not locking the rears as well as having spun the rears. And then maybe you can go back to where you had it before after that. And it's not just that, it might be setup. Because just because you've set the brake bias at a certain point, maybe since you set the brake bias up, or since the setup originally set that bias up, maybe you've now changed wing levels. Maybe now you've actually put a little bit more front wing on, which means actually you can afford slightly higher pressure to the front on the way into this, into this corner that you might be braking into, because there's a little bit more downforce on it. Or maybe the suspension geometry's changed, or you've gone for softer springs, which now means that when you brake hard, all the weight comes off the rear, and the rear is locking more easily than it was before. So you might have changed the setup to help with a different area, but you then have to compensate the brake bias to fix that or make sure it's still perfect. So that's why it could be a few reasons, but it all comes down to what maximum pressure can you get away with when you need it, which is normally kind of, braking hard in a straight line and then transitioning into a corner, like the bit of trail braking. And it's normally as you transition into the trail braking that you're going to lock one of the wheels. And it's at that point, what's the car doing? If it's locking the fronts, go to the rear, and vice versa. Yeah. You can always ask any questions you want.
What about brake migration? Like I get that there's a brake bias, meaning that like you don't split 50-50 front rear.
Yep.
But what about migration? What does that have to do with like why would you care about the migration of the brakes?
So is that? Yeah, okay. So as I understand it, and the reason I say as I understand it is because most cars don't have this. So you're unlikely to encounter this in anything other than a Formula One car normally.
For some reason I thought that there was the brake bias wheel and because what the fuck?
Where have you seen it? I'm trying to see because I'll explain it, but I think in this car. Let me have a look. See if it's in. Maybe it's in the controls. Yeah, I'm just looking down controls as well.
Sorry. It's brake miss. I thought it was brake miscellaneous. I think.
Okay. In-car adjustment. Yeah. Brake bias set. Yeah, brake miscellaneous set. Yeah, I don't know what that is. I've never heard of that. But I want to answer your brake migration anyway, because that is a system. It's just normally only a system on cars that have brake by wire and have regenerative braking from electronic systems like a Formula One car, like from the MGU K or H or whatever it is they've got. And that's basically like constantly variable brake bias almost. It's like, you can get away with different amounts of brake bias in different phases of the corner, but normally you just have to accept that, I've got a bias that I've set before the corner, and you're not going to be like braking into a corner and tweaking the control backwards as you go through the corner. But in something like a Formula One car or something like probably an LMDH, like a hypercar, Le Mans style car, they've got very clever electronic systems which know that under straight line initial braking, you can get away with really far forward brake bias. You can have like 80% front bias, but the moment you start turning into the corner, you then need to migrate that backwards because otherwise you're going to lock the front. So that's what that is. But you don't have that on most cars. But it's really cool.
That makes total sense because as you were telling me when we were doing the Silverstone thing.
Yeah.
Doing Silverstone, I think as I was breaking into Brooklands.
Yeah, Brooklands is the best example.
Yeah, most of your braking power is going to be at the end of the straight, but as you're cornering, don't just let go of the brake because you're going to have to relax it because obviously now you're losing your brake potential, and so I can effectively I'm doing some kind of brake migration myself manually as I'm going through the phases of the corner.
Yes, you're in that situation. You're being forced to do some of that action yourself, but the brake migration would mean you wouldn't have to do that as much because it would be automatically transitioning some of that brake performance rearward. So you've got much less likelihood of locking the fronts anyway. Whereas, yeah, you're having to go, well, with my current brake bias, which is, as an average, the best compromise for most of the track, I'm going to have to brake mainly in the straight. I still want to be decelerating a bit into the corner and keep weight on the front. But if I was to brake later and harder into the corner, you're just going to lock a front wheel and run wide. Whereas if you had like this variable, clever system, it would just kind of move it to the corners that could cope more, which tend to be the ones with more weight on them. You'd still have to bleed off the brakes because you've still got weight transfer. But
That's right. There's a total amount of braking you're doing which you will lose as the moment you start decelerating.
yeah,
Your ability to brake. Obviously, you're gonna have to bleed off the brake, but the brake migration from clear assists you as you're going through the phases of the corner.
And
Exit.
and really, that kind of thing is, in my opinion, best left to the engineers who have access to, in iRacing, you're going to make a best guess. If you've got that, if you're doing Formula One in iRacing and it's got a brake migration setting, I would leave it well alone and leave it on whatever the standard version is. Because unless you've got an engineer who's gone over all the data and watched every single one of your brake inputs over a number of runs and understands exactly how much percentage it changes things, you're just guessing, aren't you? So whereas the bias you can corner to corner go, ooh, I locked the front a bit too easily there, click backwards. Okay, it's still locking the front a bit too easily, another click backwards. Okay, now it's stopped locking the front. You can do it, you can figure it out as you go and come to like a best guess situation. And then also, if you've done a run, if you've done like a, I don't know, 50 lap run or whatever it is in an endurance session, probably less than that, you might know for next time, maybe you've had to go backwards during the stint, or maybe you haven't, but you thought, I could have probably changed it. You just know for next time, you can start at maybe a slightly better place or at least you know what to expect. You don't then get caught out. You go, okay, I'm 20 laps in, front tire's going to go off, let's just click backwards a couple of clicks. You're kind of like ahead of the game, then you're like a step ahead of the car. Exactly. Yeah. So we haven't done any driving yet.
Yeah, I'll think about that. I just know that I should maybe learn to use this tool eventually.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one of those nice little tools, like you say. It's just like a nice thing to have. So I'm just sort of sorting out my view. I think that's all good. What bias are we at here, out of interest? So we are at 49.9, so exactly 50-50. What's interesting is we're driving a car here with ABS, so it's a lot less obvious what to do with the bias because you aren't locking any axles, really, because it won't let you because the ABS is on. But what you have to pay attention to in this car is it's more a case of if the ABS is having to be activated, and I know you can't necessarily feel that, I don't have an ABS trigger on my pedal or anything like that. It's more like feeling what the car's doing. And if ABS senses that you've got a lack of grip, if it senses, that slight slip every fraction of a second, it's going to reduce your braking performance for you. And so the way you'll notice it is it's just not, guys, so tricky to describe this, but it's just not slowing down in the way it's supposed to do at that phase of the corner. And it probably manifests in understeer still. So although it won't be an understeer as like a lock, it'll be an understeer as in I expected it to turn better than that and it seemed to wash out a bit. So it's more of a tuning device in terms of rotation rather than preventing a lockup. But it's still the same reasons and you'd still do it at similar times. But yeah, your car looks cool. Your black Ferrari. I'm going to just turn... Sorry, go on. Okay. I'm just turning down my car volume so I can hear you better. But yeah, this is going to be a bit of a voyage of discovery because I don't think I've ever driven this car on this track. So maybe we should just go and do some laps and just tell me how the car's feeling. How much fuel? We've got 103 litres. So this is a good endurance start. We've got a lot of weight to begin this session. So the car is going to feel sluggish. It's going to feel like it's got loads of momentum. It's not going to want to stop for each of the corners. I need to turn down my force feedback. Oh, it's so nice. I haven't been on iRacing in a little while, and because I've just had so much other stuff and work to do. But it's so nice when I actually do get to come on and remind myself how good iRacing is. Yeah, they have. It's like 2024 Spa now, with the correct runoff and the correct grandstands. When you go through Eau Rouge and up the hill, you see the new grandstand at the top of the hill on the left and much more runoff on the left. This is cool. So, yes, I've only ever been one. I've been to the place a couple of times, but I've only ever been on the track once in a Renault Clio Cup car, just for a test day. But yeah, it's very nice. It's mainly because it's near the Nürburgring. It's like 1 hour from the Nürburgring, so you drive past it when you're on your way to the Nürburgring. So that's why I've been there. Really nice village. Okay, so I'm just taking a moment to get a feel for the car myself, and I'll try and describe to you how it feels to me. Obviously, we're on this pretty standard setup, so it will feel different with a different setup, but it feels quite balanced to me so far. The Ferrari feels like the nose turns in better than I expected. Like, when I turn the wheel, it does want to go to the apexes.
Interesting, actually, how
It's hard to talk and drive, isn't it? One thing I've noticed is that although we have traction control, you do have to introduce the throttle quite smoothly out of the tight corners, like turn 1. Otherwise, if you're too aggressive with the throttle, then the rear slips. Yeah, you have to still accelerate smoothly, which I quite like. And obviously over an endurance stint, if I've got 98 litres of fuel left, how many laps is that? It says, I think my calculation here is saying 25 laps. So 25 laps of Spa is quite far. You cannot afford to be spinning the wheels on exits. You should start as you mean to go on and, you know, accelerate smoothly out of the tight corners from the outset. And really, although I know I'm not about to go and do a full endurance stint here, what I'm thinking as I'm driving this car now and I'm feeling how the car reacts to me is I'm trying to turn the steering wheel as little as I can get away with and really not provoke understeer or oversteer. I'm trying to keep the tyres within themselves, because in real life and on iRacing, particularly with these kind of heavier cars, once you get into this temperature spiral, you're kind of screwed. Like, if you let the tyres get too hot, they're going to have less grip, and then they'll slide more easily, and then they'll get hotter, and then that heat and the sliding all contributes to wear. And before you know it, you've got a car that wants to crash all the time, and obviously it's slow. Whereas you can kind of, every corner that you aren't doing that at the beginning of the stint, you are effectively giving yourself an easier time in half an hour's time. And that's what I'm thinking about, like driving this, seeing how easily it spins the wheels and how easy it would be to go into a corner and understeer straight on. I'm just trying to really like treat it nicely. I like this car on this track. This feels nice. I'm going to now do like a harder push lap and see whether it really screws the tyres. See how it feels. So I'm going to drive like it's in a sprint race for a lap. But I also think it's quite a twitchy car. Like, if you're aggressive with it, it feels like it could spin you around reasonably easily, and I don't want it to do that. So Another reason to be smooth.
And so just FYI, I also got two of my kicking wheels mapped to traction control and ABS.
Ah, cool. Okay.
I don't actually know, I don't really play with any of that to be perfectly honest, but I'm told that you can. And so I've just been really trying to map it to maybe play around with it, but I don't really feel like I need to do anything special at this point.
No, so the way that you would tell if you wanted to change those, ABS is a tricky one. You'd need to feel like it was overly compensating before you change that. And what I mean is like it feels like you're never close to locking a brake, and therefore it's kind of restricting your braking performance. Because to be the most efficient mode with ABS, it needs to allow a tiny bit of locking. Otherwise, it's like it's preventing the tire from ever getting to the limit. If you see what I mean, if it reduces the braking power too much too soon, then yeah, you're not going to lock. You'll never be able to lock. But actually, you're also never getting to the potential of how much it could be slowing you down. It almost has to get right up to the limit. So it's a difficult one to really describe. And I'd say normally, whatever setting it's on by default is probably fine. Traction control is a little bit easier to think about, because when you're getting on the power on the exit of a corner, if it's never sliding, or if it feels like dead, you're putting your foot down and it's just not, it's like it feels like the power is restricted, and you think, I could get away with a little bit, being a little bit closer to the edge, a little bit more of a risk of oversteer, then obviously it's holding you back. It could, if you're on a lower traction control mode, it's giving you that little bit more freedom. But again, generally it's probably fine on the standard mode, and I'd say the quickest drivers, it won't, they'd be fast on any mode like that. And obviously the more traction control and the more ABS intervention, the more you're preserving your tyres. So even I tend to err on the side of caution with those things and not try and go too aggressive with them. I don't tend to turn down the traction control too much unless it's like a qualifying lap and you found that actually with a lower traction control mode, it really does give you faster lap times because it's not cutting the power as much, and it doesn't matter that you're wearing the tyres or overheating them a bit because it's a qualifying lap. In the race, I'd rather it kind of took the edges off of my sharper inputs. If I'm not paying attention, or especially if it's like this where it could rain, in these series. Well, I haven't turned rain on in this session to keep it consistent, but there is the risk of scattered showers. Man, I really like this car and this setup. It feels really nice. Yeah.
This is one of those cars where I think this is one of those cars in tracks where you have to be patient in the corner because rather than aggressive, I feel like. If that makes sense.
For sure. I'm going to drop back and come and drive with you in a sec because I think I've got enough of a feel for it now. Sorry, carry on.
Also, I was going to say, it's not only is it hard to talk about driving, it's also hard to listen.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You can see why Formula One drivers say, "Don't talk to me in the corners, man," or in the braking zone, because even for an F1 driver, it's taking some mental capacity away. Right, I'm just. Yeah. So I'm just dropping back so that we can run together, so I can tell you what I'm doing at different sections. So you go past me and I'll follow you. So if we were doing again some specific endurance training, say you were racing at Spa this week and you really cared about being as good as you could be, the thing that I think we should do is first of all, we would work on 1 lap pace so that you're super comfortable with exactly how to drive this track. Like the very, very best way in ideal conditions to drive the track. And then we work on essentially how close can you get to that lap over 20 laps. So I did this with Creaky a couple of weeks ago. It was really cool. Basically, I mean, you might have even watched his session if I uploaded it, where basically he had a target and he had to get within a certain lap time range every single time, or like on 7 out of 10 laps or something like that. And then the next run, we made it a harder target where he had to get within a closer, you know, his consistency had to be within a tighter range, still whilst being fast though. And that's kind of like a drill, like a you know, like an exercise drill. Yeah, a workout session. It was really, really good because, you know, you're under pressure. You can't just drive around and go, okay, well, if I screw up a lap, it doesn't matter. I'll do it again. It's like, no, like, you haven't succeeded in this session unless you do this thing. So, but really, what we're doing here, we're both kind of learning the track learning the track and the car. So, this is just like a warm-up session anyway. But okay, right. Okay. Yeah, okay. And what would be good is, what is good about that kind of thing is also that you get to figure out why you were inconsistent. Like, okay, that particular run, I screwed up one of those laps, but why was it? Like, because you didn't screw up the other ones. What was it? Were you distracted? Did you try to go through a corner a bit too fast? Like, did you get greedy? And do we need to try and make sure you don't get into a mental space where you are trying to find lap time that you don't need to find because, you know, you try and gain a 10th and you lose a second or whatever. Sorry, I know I'm talking at you in the braking zones. Don't talk to me in the braking zones, man. So with this track, I mean, every track this is the case, but with Spa in particular, one thing I like to try and figure out in a new car is what curbs can I use? Like, you know, how much of each of these curbs can you use in this car? Because I really want to widen the track. And I don't just mean in terms of like whether you're going to get an off track, but also whether or not it's stable or not. So for example, into Pouhon here, you can run a couple of wheels wide without getting an off track. Obviously, you can't go quite as wide as you did there. But you can run a couple of wheels. And all these yellow and red curbs, they're generally quite small. You know, you can go up most of them and really cut some of the corner off. So I know this is obvious stuff. I'm just kind of voicing things which I know you know. But don't be a... I think so too. I think they've put more of like a generic FIA curb in most places where it's kind of pretty smooth. So yeah, I agree. And obviously you don't really want to drive on the sausage curbs, the big ones like in this corner. But you want to get right up to them and not be afraid of the sausage curbs. I think you want to turn in quite a lot later for that first corner. And I'll show you, I'll go in front of you for the next lap and I'll show you what I mean. But I could see you like peeling away from me and I was like, oh, okay, I'm not turning in for ages yet. Because all the focus is on a fast exit down this hill. Okay, I had a massive off track there. I just cut that corner way too much.
when we first started, you told me you did not really want us to do any traction control, any ABS cars, because it's not easier, but it definitely feels like it's easier to be consistent, especially the big braking zones.
Yeah, and you don't know if you've made like a mistake in inverted commas. You don't actually know it because the car covers it up. Whereas in a single seater or a non-ABS car, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, shit, I braked too hard at that point." In this car, you still might have braked too hard. You still might have caused instability or whatever, but you don't really know about it as obviously. But yeah, you can definitely brake hard in a straight line in this thing, and you even braking into the corners, you're not risking locking up. You're risking a momentum slide. That tends to be what happens in this thing. I think at the end of the Kemmel Straight, for example, if you brake really, really hard and still try and take the corner, you're not going to lock a wheel, but the rear end is probably going to come around on you because of the momentum of your engine, because you're just carrying too much speed. It's not because you're braking harder than the car can cope with.
Yeah, fair enough.
So you're kind of restricted because of that anyway. Right, I'm going to come past you here anyway and show you into turn 1 what I was talking about. So I'm just going to make sure you can stick with me on the exit here. Right. So have a think about where it feels like you want to turn in and then see if mine's any different.
Oh yeah, way different. Way later. Oh, but shit, this is much better and much faster.
Okay, good. Good. So it just basically means you can, you're losing like 2 or 3 tenths on the very early entry, but then you're going to gain all the way down the hill. And obviously then, if you don't cut the top of Radion, then down the neck. Oh, okay. I think maybe you arrived there faster. The damage is turned off though, so you can carry on.
Okay, cool.
I got a penalty anyway for cutting the top. So I'm trying now to carry an unrealistic amount of speed at the top of Eau Rouge, so I need to change that. But it's a good problem to have, at least. It means you've exited La Source correctly. But yeah, if you go in early into that corner, you just really, really have to delay your throttle. And anyone who then waits longer is going to get a great run on you down the hill.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Plus, I was just going to say, going in later is going to give you less front tyre wear as well, because you're going slower when you then ask for the steering input. If you go in earlier, you're scrubbing the tyres more, and you're really like trying to make them. You're forcing them to turn on a tighter line when you get to the apex.
This is no name, right?
That was that's right. Yeah, that was no name. Or I think it's called Speaker's Corner, or Jackie X is its name now. Oh look, I just did the Serge line.
The black flag line.
Yeah.
So talk me through that corner again, because I feel like it's a very, very long freaking corner, and you want to have the inside, right?
So are we talking about Pouon, the one where I ran wide?
No. We're talking about
Jackie,
Jackie.
so like the tight downhill left-hander.
Yes, right-hander.
Oh, right-hander. Oh, that's the hairpin. Okay, so sorry, Jackie X is the one after that. That right-hander is a different name that I've forgotten. I don't think that's no name is the one after that. The downhill left. Yeah, so I don't know what that hairpin, the downhill right-hand hairpin's called. Yeah, it's basically it's a tricky one because it does depend on what car you're in and what the car lets you do, but it's roughly the same line every time. I try and go in relatively early, blend a little bit wide, and then cut back. So a little bit like Luffield at Silverstone, if that makes sense. Where you can kind of have 2 apexes. We'll do it together on this one, because I wasn't really paying attention on that last lap. Hey, look how much fuel we still have left. We still have like well over half a tank of fuel. Oh, sorry. I'm seeing it on my steering wheel because I have a fuel readout. So you don't have the same steering wheel as me.
No, I
On the dashboard of the Ferrari, I'm trying to see it. No, it's not there, is it? So it'll be in your black box, if you can change black boxes. That's definitely something you're going to want in iRacing for endurances. So just make sure you can look at your fuel. Right, I'm going to take this corner and then describe to you how I take it, because I haven't really thought about it. Okay, so I'm braking early. I'm diving for an apex. The car runs a little wide in the middle, and then I hook back to the apex again to get on the power, although I was too aggressive on the power and lost the rear, so I ended up overcooking it. But that's what I'm aiming for. The simple version, yeah, the simple version is hug the inside. So hugging the inside is better, obviously, than running wide. The perfect version is clip the inside, run a tiny bit wide, and then clip the inside again at a better angle. If you hug it all the way round, you won't have the ideal exit angle. So you're having to slightly compromise your mid-corner speed. But if you kind of dive for an apex, know that you're going to run a little bit wide and continue braking a little bit as it runs wide, then obviously you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. But yeah, that's one of those nuanced, tricky ones. Have you found your fuel level, by the way?
Oh, sorry, no, I was busy with the CPU, so let me focus a little bit. Oh yeah, so hold on. Auto fuel, blah blah blah. Remaining fuel at 18.4 gallons.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So that's pretty meaningless, isn't it? So ideally, if you can get, do you run any overlays, Serge? Do you run any of like the third-party overlays? So if you can find one of those that shows you a fuel readout and also a predicted stint length remaining, so as in like how many laps left, that's really useful for endurances. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to take a photograph of my steering wheel, and I will send it in the Discord group, because obviously you're not going to have my wheel, but you might be able to find an overlay which gives you the same information, because some of it I find really, really useful. So here we go. Let's add this in. I'm just taking a photo in Discord. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, if you're going to do endurance events, these are the things that just take the stress out of your life, because you're like, I've got however many gallons. I have no fucking clue what that means, though. That's useless. How many laps can I do? I just want to know how many laps I've got left. And so I know I have 70 litres, and I'm using 3.76 litres per lap. I don't need to know those figures, but it's nice to have them on there. But underneath it says 18.6 laps. So I know. So yeah, so I know that's how long I've got left. And if you change your driving style, then obviously you can see, okay, my consumption has gone down, and my lap prediction is going up, and then you can kind of, if you need to get an extra lap in, then you can. So that.
So cool. Let me see if it picks it up. Yeah, so it has. So mine has. Yeah, so it's just a bar.
Yep. Yeah, okay.
And I'll see if it tells me how many laps once I start driving a little bit.
Yeah, it might need a bit more information. It might need a couple of laps driving before it shows up.
Yeah, because it wasn't turned on, so I don't think it has the previous laps.
Yeah. Interestingly, you've got less fuel than me, even though we've done the same amount of driving. And so that'll just be because of the way we're driving. I mean, we've done a few laps now, so it's probably not that much different per lap. But yeah, I've got 68.7 litres. So normally it's because if you're not carrying as much mid-corner speed, you're probably then having to accelerate from a lower speed more. So you're probably spending more time on throttle on the exits, and obviously just like, draining a bit more fuel like that. If you carry more speed into some of the corners, that obviously means you're not having to use as much fuel, because you haven't actually scrubbed off that speed, and then you don't have to get back up to it. You're already at it. So yeah, it's definitely possible to be doing slower lap times and using more fuel. But, you know, the quicker you get, the more efficient you generally get as well, and then you'll find your fuel usage should be okay. I'm also being very, very conscious to be very smooth getting on the power, which helps a bit.
Are you race steering a little bit, or are you mostly doing well, I guess you would be saying
So by brake steering, do you mean trail braking?
race steering, no, like trail braking.
Yeah, I'm trail braking a lot, pretty much every corner. But it's still like hard braking on the straight, and then like trailing just up to the apexes, and I kind of fully release the brake just before I get to each of the apexes. I'm gonna go for a push lap now and see whether or not the tyres are still up to the task. We've got a lot less fuel than the last time I went for a hard lap, so I think it's just quicker because the fuel drop.
I use 3.8.
Okay, so I'm using 3.76 at the moment. Let's see what I'm using on this lap. So I'm obviously driving a bit harder on this lap. So I'm not trying to kind of stay in eye shot of you. Let's just see if it uses more. Normally if you go faster you use a bit more, but let's see. But then the car is lighter, so it's having to accelerate less mass, isn't it? So it should be more efficient that way. So maybe we'll use less fuel. I have to say though, Serge, I do like this Ferrari.
It's good. Wait, you had any
I have, but not in a while. And obviously different setups, different tracks. It feels nice around here. And the other thing is, if I've been driving lots of single-seaters, and then I come and do a GT3, it feels shit. I haven't been on iRacing in ages, so I don't really have a reference recently, so it's quite nice. Oh, I've gone in a bit deep there. It's also good practice though, you know? Like, the fact that it's difficult and we're doing it, even if the only thing that you were, like, training in this session was listening to the team, or me, and talking to the team, that's still good practice. That's actually a good thing to have a bit of practice with. Okay, so Blanchimont is full throttle still, so that's good. Yeah. So I'm just trying to do a second push lap to see if the tyres can cope with it. Because this is good information. If they can, then we don't need to be quite as smooth. I don't seem to be getting massively out of shape or anything, but let's see. I'm only just starting the second push. I have to say, maybe the reason the car feels good is because we've got too much downforce, and maybe this is like a really slow setup, and the faster ones have a lot less downforce, but it feels balanced to me. iRacing are doing so well with advancing their tyre models and just making everything closer to real. Every time I drive, it feels a little bit better than it did before. They do such good updates. Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's good. I love the constant improvements that you get with iRacing. It's not like in the past where you'd buy a game and that's the game. Maybe you get some updates, but generally it is how it is, static. iRacing feels like they are just not satisfied with it being a current level. It's moved on so much in the last 5 years or so. There's Yeah.
level of quality, and that means that in return, all of the sim devs have to really be pushing, to really match the level of realism that the customers are demanding,
And
which is great.
I think as well, because everyone's equipment is getting better, you do actually notice if the sim is better. Whereas, in the past, if everyone's on cheap plastic steering wheels, you might not have gotten... You've probably got away with it not being as good because, you can't really tell the difference. Okay, so the tyres seem to be able to hang on quite well for a couple of laps. I didn't really notice any drop in car performance. The car just feels faster because it's lighter, because we're kind of down to roughly half the fuel we started with now. But that's good info, though, for you. If you're going to drive this in an endurance race, you know it's probably going to get better and better through a stint.
Yeah, it doesn't feel it. I'm still within a decent time. I'm still within a decent couple of tenths of my own personal best.
Okay.
So I don't really think it's degrading too much. But then, like you said, the problem is we're also burning fuel. So
Yeah. But if you get to change your tyres at every stop anyway, which I think you do, I don't think they double stint the tyres in these, then all you have to do is get it through one stint. If they're changing tyres and fuel at the same time, then generally there's no need to keep the same set of tyres, which does take away some of the strategy. I think you can turn in quite a lot earlier for that. I think you're doing like the opposite line to me, if you see what I mean. Like you're wide when I'm tight and vice versa through there. We might need to watch a video. Might need to we don't need to look at data, but I'll show you my replay when we're finished. You'll kind of see you'll see the difference in compromise we make.
So in this section, I think I'm just doing throttle control.
Yeah.
I'm not pushing.
Yeah, me too. I lift towards the middle of the car. I go in flat, and then I just bleed off as I approach the apex, and then squeeze back on again. Obviously, we're both full throttle through here. I'm going to see, is it still full throttle when you follow another car? Yep, it certainly is. So that's good.
So this is where it's all...
Yeah, not... I was going to say, there's not a massive amount of trail braking into there because it's such a long, straight braking zone. But yeah, you still do a little bit of a trail. Yep, I'm watching. Oh yeah, you missed the apex, but it looked like your turning point was good. So, yeah, just... Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm not full throttle the whole way. I'm full throttle in the downhill left and into the right, and then I just lift a little as I go up the hill, so stay tight to the right. And the moment I feel it's not going to run wide anymore, I get back to full throttle. So yeah, it's yeah, so all of those corners, yeah. So I go in for the curb straight away, and then wide in the middle, and then back to the second one. I'll show you again on the replay. I'll show you, and it'll make immediate sense. And I think we should look at some real life videos as well of how GT drivers are doing it, on their onboards in real life. So this section, as with the other 90-degree section, about halfway through the lap ago, I try and not go more than to the middle of the track. So you've got a right-hander and then a left-hander. I try not to go so fast through the right-hander that it pushes me all the way to the left. I only allow myself half the track so that you're not compromising the entry to the next corner too much. So you know, instead of going outside, inside, outside, outside, inside, outside, I go outside, inside, middle, inside, outside, if that makes sense. Because obviously the middle of the right-hander is the beginning, sorry, the exit of the right-hander is the beginning of the left-hander. So I'll explain that better when you're not driving, because it'll make much more sense. That's okay. You'd understand it visually easily. It's just the words probably don't make any sense. Did you want to have a look at some video?
Yeah,
Cool. Let's have a look.
so it's like it says like it's used 4 liters. What if you're saying average?
I don't. Will it show me now? Because let me just leave the pits and see. I don't know whether it would have wiped it because I exited.
Like in inception, usage is 3.8. Average is 4.
My average is 3.8 for mine. Right. So let me just load up some replay so I can talk about the things that we were just discussing whilst we were driving. Right, so let's start with the last thing. Okay, so I'll tell you what. I'll bring up one of my laps where I was on my own, because then I'll be doing like my natural line. I don't know why they are though. I think they're just because they're the get faster kind of colours. Yeah. Okay. Right. So let's start with that downhill hairpin that we were talking about. So you know where we are on the track. You know the one I mean. I don't know what it's called. I should find out what it's called. In fact, does it say it here? I thought maybe it sometimes had a map. No, I'm thinking of a different screen. Anyway, right, okay. So I'll do it in slow-mo so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going for this kind of early apex here. So like where the green thing is, roughly. I'm not looking... Yeah, I'm not really aiming at that in particular. In fact, when I'm in the cockpit, I don't even think I can see it. But that... You know, this is full speed, so I'm just kind of going to the inside. So I'm making an apex here, and then I know it's going to run a little wide because of the speed I've hit that at. So I'm comfortable with it running like this wide, but that's enough room to then aim back at another secondary later apex around there and drive off the corner full throttle. Because if you look at the throttle input, if we do that again, but look at when I'm on the throttle, so obviously here we're doing a little braking because I know I'm going to run a bit wide. It's very much like Luffield at Silverstone. Like I'm braking to just get it angled back, and now I'm thinking about the throttle. Now it's aiming the right way, and bam, to full throttle. So you're coming off the corner, you know, really hard on the gas. And at that angle, I'm also not forced to go all the way wide, which makes it easier to get back over to here to get into Jackie X. Although I missed that apex. So just at full speed. I mean, this might not be the perfect example, but this is definitely roughly what I'm trying to do. Like apex, blend a little wide, get it rotated, apex again, go. And if we look at the same thing, but when I was behind you, so you'll see, like, obviously I'm not doing it at full speed, so I'm not doing it very naturally, but you'll see the comparison of where I want to turn in versus where you want to turn in. So I want to go there, and you're turning kind of like later to hit the middle apex, and I'm now deliberately wide. See how we're like doing the opposite thing at the same time? Exactly. Yep, exactly. So it wants to be in fact, let's just zoom up in the air because it's so useful that I can do this. It's like in fact, even looks like Luffield, doesn't it? It's not quite as far. You know, Luffield's even more of a corner, like carries on longer, but it's more than 180 degrees, which is, you know, it's only a little bit more, but it is a long, long corner. So it's like apex, wide, apex. But in order to do that, you've got to do some work in the middle. You can't be you can't be lazy in the middle of the corner. You have to be doing those different inputs. And sorry that. Except you still need to do this kind of braking around here. Like in Luffield, you still have to... If you go in fast enough, you're going to be forced to brake into the corner. Otherwise, it won't rotate. It'll kind of keep understeering wider and wider and wider. So it's... If I get rid of that, there we go. So, because you've gone in fast here, you're like braking knowing that you're going to... You need to slow it down that extra little bit. Oh, actually, this is a bad example because I'm behind you. So my throttle input's wrong on that one. I'll just go back to this one. Here we go. So yes, if you're going fast enough, you know you're going to have to brake a little bit to get it rotated. But actually, yeah, I'm doing a bit of a dance, aren't I? I only just looked at that. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Or, hang on, do you not say Bruxelles or Bruxelles? I don't know how you pronounce it. Bruxelles. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for doing the English version for me. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Anyway, there we go. I don't need to spend any more time on that. We're not doing a specific get Serge to be the best ever at Spa session, but it's quite interesting to go through these. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're right. If you're... I mean, at least now, like, you now know that. Every time we come to Spa, you'll remember, Bruxelles, that we've got to do this thing. Because it's kind of... We'll have a look at a... In fact, before I do the next corner, let's just bring up a YouTube video of a GT. I'm going to... Yeah, I'm going to find one. Let's find a 2024. 2024 Spa GT3. Here we go. I want onboard. And hope it's a good angle. Here we go. So, yeah, look, Ferrari, same car. There we go. Right. Okay, let's skip to the corner. Can you see this okay? Let's see whether he does the same as me. Wide in the middle. Second apex, yep. And he, the only difference is he actually does go all the way wide on the exit, which is probably better. But yeah, but definitely though you can see. I can't put this in. Oh, can I put it in slow mo? I think you can do slow mo. Playback speed, 0.5. There we go. Yeah, let's do that. Oh, wrong one. Okay. Let's turn the volume down a bit as well. And they're just past the green, kind of that's where he's tightest. Here it's going to start to blend wide. Here we're going wider, wider. It's very subtle. And now he's going tighter towards the second apex there. Yeah. And then at full speed. I'm just going to do full speed again because that's cool. It's cool that we found the same car. Yeah, dives to the inside. It's only a little wide, and then second apex, and off he goes. So, yeah. And I think it's pretty subtly wide as well. Wow, the engine sounds the same. I think it's pretty subtly wide on the onboard here as well. Maybe a little more. But, man, aren't simulations amazingly realistic nowadays? It's so crazy how good it is. Okay, so this is the other thing I was talking about. You know, I was saying in the corners that are coming up, which I don't know the name of, we're like 2/3 of the way around. You have a 90-degree right, 90-degree left, and then another 90-degree right, which sends you round off onto the fast final section. So what I was saying was, I try not to go outside, inside, outside, because then you're inside, inside, outside for the next corner, if that makes sense. Because one corner flows into the next one, what I aim to do, or what it feels like I'm trying to do, is go outside, inside, middle, middle, inside, outside, if that makes sense, because you've got to compromise somewhere. So let's see if I actually did that on this lap. So outside, inside, middle, inside, and obviously outside. Rather than the alternative, which is to go all the way out here, and then obviously you're screwed for the next one. So what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to very deliberately, I'm kind of picturing this corner as I go through it as half the width on the exit, like the track has narrowed down. I'm only allowed to go to here. And that dictates how much throttle you give it and when. Yes. Yep. And for this corner, you could go all the way wide here and be really fast through the middle of this corner, but then you'd be shit in the next one. So yeah. So that's the... Yeah, in fact, this would be a... You know how on Twitter, or wherever it was the other day, or Blue Sky, or wherever I posted that racing line thing, and you said about how you don't have enough information. This would also be a really good example, because if I just gave a 90-degree right, in fact, it'd be a great example. I could then go, but hang on, what if the next corner was the 90-degree left? Suddenly your answer is wrong. Yeah, it's really good. And actually, I'm going to go earlier in the lap because there's another similar section, although it's a bit more complex earlier on, at the end of the Kemmel Straight here. So let's go down a little on the view. So this is, I think you probably know the corner I'm talking about here. This is at the end of the Kemmel Straight. It's a similar one where, obviously, this is a right into a left where you naturally, there's no straight in between them. So you've got the option of literally flowing into the apex of the next one. Lacombe, that's it. Yeah, Lacombe. So because you don't have a straight between these two corners, the apex here effectively is you starting outside for the next one. So it's kind of, you can go straight to the inside here. But here, again, I'm not allowing myself to go much more than the middle, because otherwise you run out of time to get over to the left for the next one. And because this straight is long enough that you can get all the way across, and there is a longer straight following it, it's not very long, but it's longer than this one, there's more benefit to get a good entry and apex to this one, because obviously you're going off down to Bruxelles. So, but if this was a really short straight after this, maybe you wouldn't fight so hard to come all the way back to the left here. In fact, even with this one, I don't get all the way back. Maybe you'd allow yourself to go a bit wider here and not go all the way left here. But yeah, anyway, it's a similar thing where I've exited this. I'm like, I could go all the way wide, but if I do, I'm going to be really bad into this one. So I'm going to choose a different compromise. So yeah, that's those. Yeah. Yep.
So that second sector is a very, very example of this idea that you find the best compromise with that section.
Yes.
They call 7, 8, 9, and I guess it's called campus Stabilo. I've never heard that before.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Yep. So that's called campus. That will be because of this like building over here. So you've got like if I can go back, you have this over. Oh, you can't see. I'm pointing at something on a screen which you can't see. Yeah, hang on. Over here on the right. There's like a university kind of campus thing here, like a college or something. So that's probably why. Oh yeah, okay, it's in the way. Yeah, that's it. That's really good. Yep. And let's take a look at Team Serge and see exactly how you were approaching those same corners. So this looks perfect, exactly right. And actually, you are very deliberately doing this, whether you're doing it consciously or not. You are not allowing yourself to go wide, because if you were just throwing caution to the wind, or if you didn't care about trying to make a good compromise, there's no reason you wouldn't have just run wider there. So you picked your speed into there very deliberately, and you got probably to the same amount of width to the left as I did here. Very similar. We know about this downhill corner, so yeah, now it's obvious, isn't it, when you watch this, that you're turning in way too late into there.
I will start taking a look at the uphill points of the strip on the, and I don't usually nearly as much curve, which I won't say out loud.
Yeah, sacrilege.
Yeah, I'll just think it, but I will say it.
Okay, let's see. This is the one that I care about. That's what I was thinking about. Right. Because, you know, I assume you're already doing it. Yeah, I mean, look, man, you're doing it already. You're automatically restricting the speed that you're taking into there.
I was definitely not thinking about that first. I was not thinking about it.
It's good though if you're doing it without thinking about it. I haven't told you to do it. You're picking correct compromises. So, but I have a feeling you might not have been doing it in the final corner. Yeah, it really is a whole campus over there. There's loads of buildings there. And then you have the kart track on the right here. I've done a 24-hour race at this kart track.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, it's in fact.
4 hours?
Yeah. Let me zoom up in the sky because you can see it really clearly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a really good track. God, it's been a few years, but yeah, that's a really, really good kart track. It's a very big kart track actually, and they're building down here, like the clubhouse building's really nice. So, right, let me go back down. If you were using like an owner cart, if you're using like your own cart, and you know it's like a fast, like professional cart with open wheels, you know, no bodywork and stuff, you would normally need a license for that. But the rental carts, no, you don't need anything. You just turn up and pay. And the 24-hour race, you didn't need a license or anything. You could be complete amateur, and you could be racing against, you know, we had like a Formula 2 driver on my team, and you're racing against all sorts of people. So. Yep, no license required for the rental cart stuff. Right, I'm looking at your compromise here. So, remember what you've changed at turn 1? You know how for La Source, isn't this funny? Because I've been telling you we need to turn in earlier for a couple of the other corners. But here, these really tight corners, very short corners, I should say, tight and short, not tight and long, like, because tight, if tight means how many degrees the corner is, I mean, Luffield is like over 180, Bruxelles here is over 180, but it happens over a long period. It's not a short, tight corner, it's a long one. So actually, the speed and the line and everything is going to be completely different to a short one, like turn 1, where you have like a singular momentary apex. And that's what you have here. And not only that at this one, you want to be all the way to the right to try and get a good entry to the left, ideally. So there's even more reason to do quite a late turn into this one. So you're peeling off the side here, and then you reach the inside and go a little deep. And I can already see myself here. So let's just go back on board with me and see what it looked like to me. In fact, now you can really see the comparison difference because we're literally side by side. So I'm sticking to that white line like my life depends on it. And, in fact, helpfully, the tyre marks on here, whether or not I don't think we caused them. I think they're like iRacing paint. They are also staying there. And then there's a moment where the tyre marks end. And that's because that's where everyone's finished staying left. And then, obviously, you can see you've gained a bit of time on me on that entry point, but I now have a way easier time through the next section. Because although I'm not all the way to the right, the compromise here is more of a to the right compromise. So this is interesting. We could say, well, hang on, in the other right-left corners we just looked at, we said probably middle is where you want to end up. Why is this different? Like, why is this more exaggerated? Why am I compromising the right more than in the other one? And the answer is, it's a really slow corner, whatever you do. And there's obviously a much longer straight coming up here, which begins at a very low speed. And so you can get a potentially big offset in terms of someone who's doing your line and someone who's doing my line. It's going to be a very big performance gain down the next straight because you're just getting a much faster exit and you're going to then carry that for a long time. And our previous one, the one just before campus, it's not a very long straight after it. You're already going quite fast through the middle anyway, so there's not as much acceleration gain. And the right-hander that began the sequence was also quite fast, so to compromise it anymore, you'd have really had to give up a lot of time in the right-hander, and you don't have time to make that back down the following straight. It's just not long enough. Whereas this, the right-hander's very slow anyway, so a couple of miles an hour less isn't that much different, and it's mainly the turning point rather than the speed itself. And there's a really big benefit to getting a good exit. So that's it. Although you don't have time to think about all those things whilst you're driving, they do just need to kind of be you either need to you just need to know. No, I've told you. You don't need to figure it out for yourself. But obviously, ideally, you want to be able to just figure it out for yourself, and get into. Until I tell you, I don't have in my driving mind, okay, this is a short, tight corner, so I need to cut back more because there's a switch back after it. I'm not actually thinking that, but subconsciously there's obviously something telling me that. And then when we analyse it, we can work it out. Let's have a look. It does, but we don't use it, interestingly. Like, we're not actually all the way out here. Let's have it just before we judge that. Let's just go. I'll go onto this lap and rewind because then we're on the end of my best lap. Just want to see if I'm doing the same thing when I wasn't following you, because I might have exaggerated it more because I was behind you and I'm trying to get a cut back. So let's see if it's any different here. I'm not all the way on the white line, but I wouldn't say I've kind of peeled off. I just wasn't really all the way on it on this lap. But let's just have a look. About the same. About the same. It's definitely over halfway, isn't it? Yeah, you can see. Yes, you're right. Yeah, you can see even the maximum is the middle seam here. So yeah, but yeah, that's and on board. How much lock is it? It's a lot. Yeah, it's there, but it's not. That's not like forcing it. It's just I'm going slow enough that actually the car can cope with that much lock. It's not. You can see from this view, it's not understeering when it's happening. It's really turning well. So, and then obviously the same here. Yeah. Yeah, you'd be scrubbing this front if you tried to do it too fast like that. But what speed are we down to? It's still a really high speed in normal terms. 65k. They're still quite fast to go through such a tight corner. But yeah, this car can obviously cope with that. But yeah, okay. So now finally, I want to see how you've ended up doing turn 1. Because remember when I was following you, and you asked me, what is it like? And I said, I thought your turning point, yeah, that's much better. You just missed the apex. And maybe you just went in slightly too fast, but that's way better. I mean, even missing the apex, that should be better than what you did on the first lap. Yeah. Yeah, and I think you're peeling away, I mean, a very similar rate to me. So if I go in slow-mo, like you're that far off, and look, when I get to the same point on the track, I'm about the same. The only difference is I've slowed it down enough so that I get a bit... I mean, I'd still want to be on there. Yeah, good shout. So... I'm just having a look now. So... Yeah, I think you're like 5 to 10k quicker depending on which part. Yeah, you're just a few kilometers an hour ahead, which is just pushing you that bit wider. So,
Okay, I'll try to aim for. I'll try to aim for like high 80s, high 80s.
and obviously, yeah, obviously don't try and aim for a particular figure. Just try and aim for the fastest you can get away with without it scrubbing wide, and then you'll get like a feel for the speed rather than, you know, obviously we're looking at the speed afterwards to go, yeah, okay, objectively we can tell why that happened, but mainly it's like just stay on the brakes that bit harder, that bit longer, or maybe that, I don't know, I can't see your pressure here, but mine is still quite hard, still, okay, oh, look, I've come fully off. That's interesting. It's a very, very short trail. I'll tell you why it is. It's because the focus is on really fast exit. I don't want to go as fast as possible up to the apex and trail. I want to like get the car angled and just drive off. I want to like release it. So yeah, the brakes come off quite early, like well before the apex, to try and get back on the power earlier. I don't know whether that's the case on the fastest lap. Let's see on this one. Because it's always maybe slightly different when you're following someone. Let's see. So it's maybe a little harder initially, this one. I might just be approaching faster. Slightly longer. Yeah, okay, that's more like it. Maybe because I was following you, I was like just backing off earlier. But yeah, okay, so I do trail almost until the apex, but that's all right. I haven't even looked. Yeah. Yeah. Do you want me to shall I just play the replay of my fastest one here rather than me driving it again? Because this is probably better than what I'm going to do just in one flying lap. Yeah. But I can play this now and then you'll see all my steering inputs. Do you want me to leave the pedal inputs up as well? Yeah, yeah, exactly. That saves you having to check the replay. Yeah, yeah. That's fine. I'll just leave it on this. And do you want me to just keep my mouth shut now? I'll just stay quiet. Okay. So we've already done this corner to death, but just wide, really slow, early throttle. I obviously got a little bit sideways there, so probably not ideal for a endurance lap, but just slightly smoother on the gas than I was there. So down here, oh, we didn't look at your lap here. I'm going in early to use all of this curb, then lifting, and then back on the gas. But it wasn't even a full lift. It was like an almost full lift. We will quickly look at yours there as well, because I think you were turning in slightly differently to me. Obviously, this is just easy. I don't have a brake reference here. You said about the 100 board, so 200. Yeah, I think the 100's not bad, actually. I've maybe gone in slightly too fast there and missed the first curb, but not bad. Almost all the way wide for this one. And definitely trying to use the exit curve there. We've spoken about this corner a lot as well, but this is the lap you've seen a few times. So apex, a little bit wide, very patient with the throttle. And then power, you can go all the way wide there apparently, the real life guys do, but you won't have much time to get back over to the right. And then pull on. I hopefully try and open it up slightly with that curb. Yeah, a little bit. Kind of a standard apex. Yeah, exactly. And we've also seen this one a couple of times. Sorry, my phone's going. Campus. So yeah, middle. You're doing this one, I think, pretty well anyway, but you now know what it should look like. I'm braking going down a gear here because I want to be accurate. This is just like a normal outside, inside, outside kind of a deal. This, you can see I'm lifting a little, but not a lot. So you mentioned you were lifting there as well. You don't need to do a very, very big one. And then this is all just full throttle. Short line though. Don't go further than you need to. I'll show you what I mean in a moment on that. Yes. Just to open it up a little bit. Down to first gear. We've seen this again. Slightly to the right. Again, probably slightly too hard on the gas. You know, I had a moment of oversteer, but it wasn't uncontrollable. Okay, so what I was going to show you... oh, yeah. Our lines into Eau Rouge. Okay, so down here... Let me get my keyboard back. I'm turning in quite early to I want to be all the way out on this curb here so that I've got a much easier line up the hill here. So it's like not a very hard turn. Let's just grab yours. Or a lap where I was behind you, actually. This isn't the right one. Maybe, was it this one I was behind you? Yeah, here. Okay, so I just remember you turning in like differently to me, so I'm just going to watch it. Yeah, it was that there. You went for that curb quite late, and what all that means, you see like how I'm angled at it here, and you're out here a bit longer. All it means is, although you're going to be as wide as I am, your car will be angled differently when you're on the curb, and you'll have more of a right turn to do. Whereas because when I get here, yeah, see how your car's like facing a bit left? And then you have to go right, so you're going to have to use more angle, and you're not using all of it. Whereas I'm already there, so I just turn right. I'm kind of going straight right, and you're going left right. That's all. So there's just a slight easier, yeah, a tiny little bit of an easier way to do that. And then at the end of the lap, in the long section towards Blanchimont, I felt like you were going wider than you needed to at some... Right, just here. So through this flat-out left-hander before Blanchimont, if I go on board. So I want to take like a short line here. See how we're just slightly offset? It's only a couple of meters different. But see how you're like taking the high line, and I don't think you need to. You see there's like that slight distance difference. Because I can still end up out here, same as you. And it's not like I arrived there... This is funny actually because it's like Eau Rouge we were just talking about, except it's not. You'd think from on my line I'm gonna end up there and then have to turn tighter because I'm getting there like too late. But actually you've got this straight where it resets, so we're both facing straight now, and then we turn into Blanchimont. Whereas at Eau Rouge there is no straight. You go left immediately right. Whereas here we're going left, straight, then again. So that's why I'm doing a short line through there. There we go. We always uncover these funny little things that, you know, you only find them when you're talking about them. But yeah, if you've got a reset point, then you can make a slightly different compromise, because it's not a compromise. You're only getting a positive. So for me, through here, whatever that corner is called, it's easily flat out, but I need to make sure I'm positioned to the right for Blanchimont. And I can do both of those things without any problem. Whereas your line is like, that's what I'd do if Blanchimont was immediately after this corner. If it was left, I'd be following your line too, because I want to be out there ready to do Blanchimont. And there's no time to do it otherwise. I'd be arriving and having to like do like a V shape. So I remembered that in the moment, and I forgot to mention it to you. Yeah. For that one, it is for sure. Yeah, because that's probably not a lot of time, but it might be 200. It might be something, you know. And positions qualifying certainly has been decided by less than that. And over a race, if you're doing that every single time, you might have travelled like 50 meters further at the end of a stint. Who knows? Like, it's not the most important thing, but it's a free. When something's as easy as that, like you don't have to do anything. There's no skill involved. You just go, okay, I'll go shorter there. So they're like an easy win. Very, very much low-hanging fruit, exactly. Free optimization. I'm going to use that phrase. That's really good. It's a free optimization. Right, Serge, I am going to just stop the session recording so I can save it.